And in this video we are going to actually fix the issue which we saw in the previous video, and that is related to the pagination, right? So we created all those pagination kind of things, all those implementation, and then we tested that, but then the data is coming as empty, right? So why is that? So we learned how we can create a pipelines, how we can use aggregate functions, right? And then of course we created a filter as well. We learned a lot of mongodb operator which we are using in our query, but still we are not getting the data that may be related to certain functionality, not functionality but the filters which we are passing over there. All right, so let me, without wasting much time, let me do one thing here. So you can see here we have created couple of filters over there, that means filters A and filters B, right? And then we are assigning these two filters to the filters, final filters, right? But the thing is, filters B should only be there if and only if this we have book search over there, right? If we are not passing any book search, that means that data won't be there in the filters DTO, right? Which we are getting in, of course, get books filter. So which means this data should only be there in the filters if there's book search field. All right, so let's do one thing over here. What we can do here is, instead of assigning it directly as a hard coded, you can say, you can just remove it from here, because this is based on a condition. So I'll just remove it from here, and then we need to assign this based on the condition. And how can we do that? So we know that we have condition to check if filters DTO, I will say filters DTO, and then shop ID. Not shop ID, this time we are going to say book search. If book search is there, if it is not going to be empty, that means the value is there, and in that case I'm going to say okay, we need to append filters B where in this filters DTO, not filters DTO but this filters variable, right? So how can we do that? So for doing that, we know we have a append functionality. And why we are going to use append functionality? Since we cannot reassign these filters because this data is actually required over there, right? So in this case, what I'm going to say is, okay, let's append this, because, and why we can append this, because you can see here we are using bson.a, that means this is an array, right? So how we are assigning an element inside the array, we know that. How can we do that, right? So for that we need to use append function in golang, and then here we are going to say, okay, this is the filters, and I will say filters, not here but filters, and then inside filters we have and condition over there, so we need to access $and, right? And then we are assuming this of a type array. So of course first parameter of your append function should be an array, right? Array instance. So if I'll say okay, just assume this an array. So how can we do that? We are going to say no, okay, just type cast into array, because we know that this and is going to be bson.a, that is bson.a, right? And then the item which we are going to append into this array. So this time I'm going to say, okay, item is going to be filters B, right? That's what we are going to append here. So that's fine. And then we'll say here filters, not filters but filters equals to, we cannot say directly here like this. So instead what we need to say is, okay, let's click on quick fix. We are typing wrong name here, that's why it's giving error. It should be filters, not fillers, right? So I'll say filters, and then what is the issue there? It says cannot use append, and then cannot use append value of type primitive a as primitive m value, right? So basically it says you cannot append like this. So how can we do that then? And of course we need to append that. So how can we do? Basically we are going to access this and condition over here using filters. We can say, okay, let's do one thing, filters of $and. All right, now this is completely fine. Why? Because this and $and is of course an array. We can see here bson.a, and here we are just typecasting that so that we can make sure, okay, this is going to be instance of array. And then we know that append function accept second parameter as well, and that parameter should be element which is going to be inserted or appended. So in this case, filters B is going to be appended, since we are appending filters B based on this condition. So now this is completely fine, and then we have one more issue over there. So how can we say that one more issue over there? I believe if we'll open the MongoDB, let's open MongoDB, and I saw that issue before actually, but then we moved on to some other topic and we left that over there. So let me show you that what's the exact issue over there. Just open MongoDB, and my system is really working very slow. That should not be the case. So I'll say okay, let's open this MongoDB. Just wait a couple of seconds and then we'll come back here. Before that, okay, what is opening there? No, we don't need this actually. I need Compass over there. So I'll just search for Compass, MongoDB Compass. Yeah, it is there, and actually we need to open Compass so that we can see the data in collection. So I'll say Compass, not this Compass. Why is not coming? So I'll say MongoDB Compass. Okay, now this actually we need to open this application so that we can see the data over there. But here we are, what exactly I am trying to say here is we are assigning one more filter over here, and that is created by. And from where this filter is actually getting applied is from the shop ID. Of course, we have, since we are logging from the user ID, and user we are assuming as a shop owner, so of course that is shop ID, and then we are assigning that shop ID over here. That means this should be working fine. Let's test that. But again, when we will be logging as a staff, or a staff will be logging, or manager will be logging, in that case shop ID won't be there because their user ID is not shop ID, that is staff ID or manager ID, right? So in that case we won't be getting data, but still in that case we need data. So how can we do that? So we'll come back on that. Okay, but before that let's test in case of owner. Okay, so I'll go back here in MongoDB and I'll try to connect with localhost. We should be able to connect. Okay, we are able to connect actually, and then I will come here in bookshop. Let's open this book, and we should be able to see if created by is there. We can see here there is no created by, because the time when we implemented this functionality, at that time we didn't verify, we have not implemented the JWT authentication, so that we cannot rely on the client data itself. Okay, and why is that so? Because let's say I will just take out this payload and execute a script or execute this API with modified payload. That means I can inject any of the created by value over here and it will get saved. That was the issue that time. Okay, so now what we will do here is we will try to update all this created by. Okay, and now this should be basically, this should be object ID and it should be referring to any of the user. Okay, so in this case of course user is going to be shop owner, so user ID should be here in place of created by. So how can we do that? Let's update that manually over here, but moving forward we'll update our API, create book API, so that it will just adapt those changes. So let's do that quickly. If you guys are not able to understand, please let me know in the comment section so that I can make you understand it in more easy way, or I will just try to do that so that you can get it properly. So here what I'm going to say is, okay, in place of this empty string, actually there should be a user ID over there, and this time we have only one shop. We may have n number of shop, right? And for that what we are going to do is we'll just copy this from here, this object ID. Alright, and then I will open MongoDB shell. You can also do that directly from here, otherwise you have to do that from your API or program. Every time you have to update all those data, but since we have a lot of data, we cannot do that manually from the API, since every time I have to go back in the UI and then click on update. How many times you will click on update, right? For that, what I will say is, okay, use bookshop. You have selected this database bookshop, and then in that bookshop we have access to database, and then using database we will be saying, okay, take out this collection user, right? But we don't need actually user here. We'll say, okay, take out let's say book, right? Because we are updating this data user ID there in the book. So I will say, okay, book, and then I'll say find, and find all data, because this time we have only one shop over there, right? So since shop has having access to save the data, so I'll say, okay, that is fine, and then I'll say for each will it work? Let's see. It should be working actually, and then it will have the document access, I believe. Or we can do one more thing over here. Instead of iterating through each of the document, we can just say, okay, db.book, and then update many. There's one function, update many. It's not there. So update many should be there actually, and then in that case, very first parameter is going to be the condition. So condition, let's say I'm going to say created by is going to be empty. That is the condition, right? Because we saw that in whole book collection we don't have created by over there. We have all those created by as empty string, but this time we are going to set a new data of the user ID, right? Because user is having access to create this book, and then staff should also, not a staff, but staff will have multiple roles, like staff will have roles of manager, staff will have roles of general staff. So manager may have access to create those books, right? So in that case we need to join manager collection as well to fetch the data if there's no user specific data, right? Where there's no user data, that means user didn't created those books, manager created those books, then we have to join the staff collection, right, to fetch those staff details who created that. Cool. So here I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. Next I'm going to just update that. So for that, what I'm going to say here is, okay, for updating document you need to say set, you need to use this $set operator. Okay, this will set or replace the value which exists there. If the value is not there, it will set a new value which you are providing here. So I'll say, okay, set created by, so I'll say created by, and then in this case I'm going to say not a string, but it is going to be object ID. So I will say new object ID, and then the one which I copied from the user, of course this is going to be the user ID, because I'm assuming this user has created all those books. Okay, so just execute this and see if that works. You can see here matched count is 1, modified count is 1, but that should not be the case. Let's see that if it is working. You can see here, okay, it is actually updated, created by is there, and then here we can see created by is something else. How come? 5bb, and then 5dd, 5bf, okay, 5c1, 5c3. okay, actually that should not be the case. Every time this created by is different, that means there's something wrong happening, because actually this created by should refer to user, not a random ID over there, correct? So we need to dig deep inside this API where we are saving this book, and then we need to rectify this issue, otherwise it will create a problem for us, because created by, we are saving some data over there, we are saving this ID, but then this ID does not exist, neither in staff nor in user. That's the issue, right? This is how we are going to identify the issue in real time as well. This is, you just expect this is happening in real time, because the same way you are working in company, okay, you are going to work in company, there's no difference at all. So what I'm going to do here is, I'll just go back here, and then, okay, before that, what I'm going to say here is, okay, just do one thing, comment this for now, so that we can test if this API is actually working fine. So I'll just comment this, and what I'll do is, I will do one thing. We have added condition, and then we should be getting the data actually. So let's test this API, and see on UI if we are getting data actually. Let the system restart, not system but the application restart, and then everything should be working as per the expectation. So this is fine. Yeah, server has restarted now. Let me go back to UI and then let me just refresh this page and see if the data is coming or not. You can see get all books is triggered, and this time we should be expecting some data. You can see we are getting the data over there, but then why that data is not displaying here? That means there is issue with the structure. We are expecting data in certain structure, but then we are getting data in different structure. That's why this data is not getting appended here in the table, or it is not being passed in the table. It is being actually passed but not in the correct format. So if we'll just format this data, then everything will be working fine. But before formatting this data on client, we have issue here from the backend as well, because from backend also the data is not coming in the expected way. At least we are expecting a overall object, and then inside one key will be there as a data, and then other key will be there as a total record. But you can see here data is coming as an array, and then inside we have data and then one more total records, and then inside total records we have an object with key count and there's total count. But the good thing is we are getting data and we have total 18 data over there in the back in the DB. So we are able to at least get those counts as well as data. So API is working correctly, working totally fine, but we need to structure the data so that it can we can show it properly on the UI. So let's do that quickly, and then we should be able to debug the other issue as well. Okay. So what we are going to do is, okay, we are going to go back. We know that we know the concept of concept of pipelines, right? Every stage is a function where the data will be coming from its previous function. That is the simplest way you can understand it. Every stage you can call it as a function, and then data will be coming from its top stage. Okay, so if I'll say I am defining one stage over here, that means data will be coming from where? Data will be coming from this match stage. Okay, first it will match for all those data, then this data is being passed to the next stage, and then so on. Okay, so this is how pipelines work. It is very simple. If you'll mug up, you can mug up, and then you will have difficulty understanding all this concept, but keep it simple, you will understand it better. Okay, so now here we can say, okay, we have all those data, and then we have facet as well. We have used facet to get required data in the different format, right? But then I want to structure this data once more. How can we do that, right? So for that, we know that we are projecting all those data. We have the key to project all those data, but then since we have projected all those data, we don't need to project any data, but this time we just need to collect this data in a specific format. We just need to format the data, and for that we just need 2 or 3 fields, depend on your needs. So this time I need this kind of functionality, this kind of a stage. So let's do that down below. I will say, okay, let's write one more stage here, and I will say this as a format data in the expected format. And what I'm going to say is, you can see here on UI we are getting data as an array. That means we need this, and this data will always have a 0th item. Okay, and then if we will take out this data 0th item, that means we will be having data as well as total records, because that is an object, and that's what we need. But then inside total record also we need to take out this object only, not the array. That means item at index 0, and here also we need to take item at index 0. How can we do that? We know that we have this kind of stage over there. So let's do that here and see if that works. So what I'm going to say is, okay, let's use one more stage over here, and I'll say bison.m, and I'll say, okay, project this. I need one more project here, and I'll say again bison.m, fine, and then I will say, okay, let's take out data, right, and data is going to be bison.m, all right, and then here I'm going to say, okay, not like this, inside string I'll say, okay, use array element. So I will say array elim at, right, and then I will provide those array values over here. So I will say bison.a and then the data, because the data, we know that data is coming inside this specific key. So I will say, okay, dollar data, right, and then the element index 0, right. So we are good with this data, and then what else we need? We need one more thing, that is of course total records. So we'll just do, okay, add one more thing, total records. I will say, let's say total records, and then not like this, it's going to be an bison.m, okay, and then this time we are going to say again array element, but this time data should be coming from where? This time data should be coming from this total records at index 0, right. So I'll just copy paste here, and then I'm not going to say data this time, I'm going to say dollar total records, right. So dollar total records, and then even we can go further one more step, and I can say inside that we'll have count as well. So I'll say count and then dot count and then index item as 0. So it will go inside that array item. Let me go back here, and it will go inside this array item, and we have one object over there, right. So in that object it will say take out the count, right, and where this object exists, of course this exists at index 0, right, index 0, there's one item only. So that's what we are saying here, okay, get me data like this. All right, now we should be getting data in the expected format. Let's see if that works, and I believe it should be working. Let me just save it and test that. But still we will be getting data from the backend in the expected format, but then on the UI also we need to format this data, because this time we have two key over there, one is data and then other one is total records, right, and this is completely dynamic, it is based on the filters, right. So let's do that quickly and see that if that is working fine. Let the server restart, and of course you guys know it's taking a lot of time to restart. Meanwhile, okay, this restarted this time, great. So I'll go back here and I will clear this console, network console, and I will just refresh once more, and now this time we should be getting data in expected format, which we are expecting as per our code. So let me click on this, and you can see here we have data, that's the expectation actually. We have array of data, and then inside data we have 0th item, but then we don't have, okay, again we have data, and then inside we have 0th item, and then we have again data, and then we have total records. Okay, we have total records over there, but then we don't need this kind of things. We can say, okay, get me just this is data, and don't get me this 0th item. Instead of this 0th item, you can say, you can just give me direct data and then total records. Why we need this 0th item? This is not required at all, right? So here we need to just modify this once more, and can we say that, okay, data dot data, can we do that? Let's see that, and if that works. I'm not sure if that will work or not, because we need to understand the structure, how exactly it is coming. If we are able to understand it more properly, we should be able to do this very quickly. We don't have to follow any naive approach, or we should not be taking any help from anywhere. Okay, that is how development works. And I keep saying this kind of thing because you will be facing this kind of issue in real time, in the production time, or in the companies, anywhere you are working. All right, let's go back in UI, and then I will just clear this console, refresh the page, and see how data is coming this time. I hope everything is fine. okay, data, we are getting data, but then we are not getting those data which is actually expected there. So we cannot say this like this data. Let's save this, and then it is still coming inside the data, inside data. Can we do that? Can we do this like, instead of this data directly, it will take this data on the parent level? And how can we do that actually? Is there any option to do that? Because this way, this again, this data will be coming inside this data, which I'm not expecting at all. So we'll find a way, but for now let's refresh the page and see. At least we should get the data which we saw that before. So here, if I'll click on this, we have this data, but then we have 0th item as well. That may be because of this data. Here we are getting as an array, but then we are taking out those data and then assigning back to array itself. Not array, but assigning back to object. But instead, okay, that's fine, but then this object is actually going back into the data, and I believe this is the culprit. So how is that happening? Instead of this, can't we say that, okay, just add this element and then it will do it work? So how can we say that? Okay, let's do one thing. What we are going to do here is, I believe this is correct only, and then just modify that. Instead of returning this data, right, we are just returning this data, since this, whenever we, okay, this in MongoDB, whenever we are calling this aggregate function, it will just return a single overall object, okay, and then inside that, not object but array, and then all those items will be in that array, okay, in a single object array. And then we need to take all those object, not object but the object at index 0, and then we need to format the data. So in this case, since we are returning whole data, that means of course there will be an wrapper of array, and then inside that we will be having this original object over there, right? And that is what happening over there. So let's do one thing over here. We can say, okay, we'll be getting data, but this time I'm going to say this data, instead of this data, let's return a 0th item, okay, because we will be always getting data in 0th item as per these pipelines. So let me save that and see if that works, because we have zero data and total records already filtered from here, not filtered but the formatted from here. So we should be getting those data in the object format. Let the server restart and we will test that once more and see if that is working fine. All right. Okay, the server is restarted and we'll go back in UI, and then I'll just refresh this page. Okay, you can see here, if I'll click on this API, and here you can see data.data, and then we have total records. Now this data is no more array, this is just data, and then if I'll open this data, okay, this time this only single data we are getting, right? And why is that so? Because this data is actually, this data, can we go back to code? And yeah, that's fine. So this time the issue is, this data is coming only because we are taking out those data at item 0. I believe that is the case. So let me just remove this and save it once more, and we will test that if that is the issue. And if that is the issue, we need to find other way. If you guys are having any suggestions, or if you guys have any idea how can we resolve this, you feel free to put that in the comment section so that we can look into that, right? So what I'll do here is, okay, that's fine, go back to UI, just refresh this page. Now we are done with refreshing the page. I will just click on this get all, and then I should be able to see all those data here. We have data, but then we are again getting only one data over here. How is that possible? Right? That is possible, I believe, because we are taking out the data from the item 0th only, and this should not be the case. Instead, we just need to take out all those data instead of array element at 0. Okay, and how can we do that? So if I'm going to say, okay, data is going to be, let's say 1, that means data should be projected. Let's see if that works. So I'll just save this and let's see that in action. The server is getting restarted. Meanwhile, we'll go on UI and then we should be able to check that. I don't need this folder actually. I need to go to UI and let me just clear this console. I will just click on refresh once the server is restarted. So server is restarted and then I will click on refresh and then we should be getting the data in the actual format. And we are saying this for the last few minutes, right? So this is actually the case you will be facing while you are developing some features or while you are developing in real time, right? It is not like if you are sitting on a system, you will just do write code and everything will be working fine 100%, right? That is not going to happen most of the time. You need to debug the code, you need to find a certain pattern and then you need to work on that. So yeah, we have data then. We are getting data and then, okay, this time we are getting data in array, of course. Let's open that and we can see, okay, we have all those data in place. Why? Because we are not taking 0th item this time. That means we found out the pattern, how the data is coming. So what is that? Instead of this taking inside 0th item of the data, we are going to say, okay, let's take data itself. And then here what I'm going to say is, don't return the wrapper of array, just return 0th index. So let me save that and then go back to UI. Now it should be working in the expected way. Let's confirm that. And this time I'm not going to say data. I want to say it actually items, and we'll do that. First, let's check this, and if this works fine, we'll do that. Because if you are going to see the structure, you cannot say this. If you're going to see data.data, it's looking weird, right? So instead of data.data, you can say data.items. That makes more sense, right? And that is actually looking good. Not looking, but saying is also good. Data.items, right? That's fancy. So here what I'm going to do is again refresh the page and then check if that is working fine. So let's click on this and see. Okay, we have data and the data is object, of course, and then inside data we have total records. And then we have data, hooray, we got that data and we got total records in the expected format, right? But if we want to change this key, how can we change this, right? Instead of data, I just want to change this name to item, let's say. How can we do that, right? So can we do that here once more? I will say, okay, add one more field over there. So we know that, how can we add that? So we did that actually before here, and I'll say, okay, just copy this here and paste this here. I'm just going to say, okay, rename or assign one new key. Just say assign one new key. That makes more sense actually. Assign new key with the value of data. Right? So I'll just copy paste here and I will say, instead of staff, use items in this case. And then this is no more going to be an array. I will say, okay, don't use this. No, don't use this, but I'm going to say you just need to use whole data instead of this array element. And how can we say that? So can we say that, like, okay, item should be array, and can we say like this, okay, item should be the data itself. Let's see that if that works. I'm not sure if that will be working fine or not. I'm just playing with this queries, and this is how you can play with the queries and you will be getting the expected output. Okay, not once, not twice, but thrice. In thrice attempt you will be getting those outputs, and till thrice attempt you will be able to understand it more, and you will be able to write a very complex pipeline as well. That's the beauty of MongoDB pipelines. So here I'm not going to say data this time. I'm going to say, okay, items, take out the items. So I'll just save this and see if that works. Now the server is getting restarted. Let's wait a couple of seconds. Every time we need to wait for a couple of seconds because my system is working a bit slow. In your case, it should be working as much as quick as possible. So we are almost done. Okay, server is restarting actually, but even it is working better than before. So I will go back to UI and I will say, okay, just refresh this once more, but let me just clear this first and then refresh this. Let's check if we are getting data. Okay, we are getting data, and then you can see here we are getting items instead of data. Now this looks fancy in terms of saying as well as seeing. Data.items, right? Data.data is not looking good, or not by saying it's not good. So that's completely on you. If you want to use data.data, of course you can do that, but then I'm saying data.items, it makes me feel good. Okay, so that's completely on you here. There's no concept revolving around here. Okay, so now I'm going to use this data.items. All right, I'm going to use this data.items and then the total record, and I'm going to pass this total record as well as items to this specific table, so that we should be able to see all those page number here, right? If it has to be paginated data, right? And how can we do that? Let's go back in code and we will see. Now this time we are done with the mongodb aggregation. We learned the aggregation, how aggregation is working. We are expert in aggregation basically, right? If you want to perform more functionality, you just play with this aggregation stage. You will be getting the data in the required format. Okay, and if you feel any issue, please let me know in the comment section. I will try to answer all of those queries as early as possible. Okay, so now you learned each and every concept, not every, but most of the concept which is going to be used in the companies, or which you are going to use in your specific project or anywhere freelancing somewhere you are working, right? And then we learned a lot of concept here related to interface, dependency injection, and also we learned one more thing, dependency inversion principle. And what is that? I have not introduced that before. That is nothing but, you can say, if you are designing the service over here, but the thing is there's one issue here. If you can rectify that issue, then you can say you have followed solid principles. And you know that what is solid principles. If you're creating application by following solid principles, your application will be more robust and it will be highly flexible, scalable, and then you can basically add as many as feature on top of that. So basically here why I'm saying that this application is not following exact solid principle but partially, because there's one issue here. That means the service, basically this is service and this is actually the business logic. It should not depend on the lower functionality, low level functionality. What is that? So our low level functionality is of course the connection with the MongoDB or database, right? And in this case we are depending on bson that comes from MongoDB. This should not be the case actually. Instead, if we'll call this function get pagination book, it should just done its work. It should just perform its business logic, not this kind of things. This should be handled on repository, okay? So that there will be no coupling between service and the repository, and then your code will be highly modular, highly flexible, and decoupled, right? Then you can say you have achieved 100% solid principles. Of course, you saw that substitution, like we have followed the interface and then we have substituted those values, and then we have also followed dependency injection as well, right? But if we can follow these things, you are 100%. Then you're 100%, you can say you have followed solid principles, right? But then you understand, now if I'm saying this, you understand all those concepts, right? And moving forward, you can apply all those concepts here in your application, not here, but anywhere where you're working, and then that will benefit you in the long term, right? This is how you are going to develop the application. Since putting all those concepts in a single video is not possible, but then if you need that, please let me know in the comment section. I will create a separate video for that, and I will try to make it in more easier way. All right, so enough talking. Let's go back to UI and modify that. So this time I'm going to say, okay, let's go back to client, and then I'll say open src, and we are going inside views. Okay, that is also fine, but before views we need to open store, because we are triggering that API get all books from the store, and then store is responsible to save all those data in the store which is coming from the API, right? So in this case what I'm going to say is, okay, go back to bookstore, and here I'm going to define a couple of variable over here. What is that variable actually? I will say, okay, books is there, then I need one more thing over here, total records. I can say total book records, right? And I will say by default as a 0. We are assuming that there is no record, and this data should be coming from the API, right? We saw that the total record is coming there actually. So now if that is there, then we need a getter as well, so that we can use this getter anywhere in our component or anywhere in our page, right? So I'll say get total book records, right? And here I'm going to say, okay, you will have access to a state, and then state will give you back this. Let me go back here, state, and then here I'll just copy this and paste this here. So from this state we are going to get this total records, of course, and wherever we'll use this total records, get total book records, we'll be getting those values. So I'll just copy it from here once, and then here also we need to modify certain things. And what is that exactly? So here we need to modify, okay, when we are going to set books, that time this books will be, okay, that is completely fine, this book will be set over there. And then let's create one more method over here and keep that total record independent of this book. So I'll say, okay, set total book records, right? You can of course do that here as well, but then you are not following a certain principle. That means this functionality should be pure, it should do a specific functionality, not mug-up, right? So why is that I'm saying? Because of course if you are going to assign total record as well, then that is not related functionality. Instead this function should be responsible for just to assign the books, and the books is, of course, the books has to be an array, not the total, it should not contain total records, right? So I'll create one function, I'll say, okay, set total records, and this time this function is going to be mutation function, and then I'll say, okay, this will have access to state, and then I'll say give me total records. So total records, all right? And then here what I'm going to say is, okay, you are going to set total records every time, not every time, anywhere you want. So I'll say, okay, not get total record, it should be total book record. So let me just go back to state, and then I'll say, okay, copy this variable from here and paste it over here in mutation. So let's paste that, and then I will say total records, cool. And now we'll create one more function here. Let's say we have already 11 record there or 10 record there in the collection, right? Not collection but in the state. But then if we added one more record, okay, we don't need to worry about, we'll do that later. That means when we'll go back to list page, of course the data will get refreshed and the count will also get refreshed, so we don't need to worry about that. So just set the data from here, total records, and then what we'll do is just use this function on actions, okay? And here what we are going to do is go back to getAlls method, and here we will be having data, that's completely fine, but then inside data we'll be having two more property over there, that is items and then the total records. So this time I'm going to say, okay, take out items, and then control V, I'll use this mutation function to set the total record as well. So I'll say, okay, use this function as well. So this time no more items, but this time it is going to be total records, right? This is what we are sending from the backend. So we are good with this functionality, we are done with this functionality. I'll just click save, and then what else we need to do here? Nothing. So next what we need to do is we need to just use this getter to get the latest data. Of course we have getters for get books, right? So we have getters for total record as well. So I'll just copy this from here, and then where we need to go? We need to go in book list page, and there we need that records, right? So here we need that record get all book, that is completely fine, but then total record should be coming from there as well. So what I'll say here, go down and see if we have those getter present over there. No, we don't have. We, of course, this is a new getter, so but this getter should be inside bookstore. That's completely fine. So I'll say okay, just use this getter as well. Not use, but just map this getter as well in this computed property, so that whenever that record changes, this computed property will get reacted, and then we'll be having the latest record over there, right? So I will just copy this from here, and I will come up here, and this time I'm not going to say total records, I'm going to say get total book records. That will be of course coming from the Vuex store, right? So now you understand how we are doing this. Very first we created those API in certain way which will be returning data as well as not data but the data array, and then total record as well. Then based on the total record only we are going to show that button, pagination button, so that we can iterate over the page and see the data. And then if there's no more data, then we won't be showing more button over there. Let's see that in action if that works. So what I'll say here is limit is, let it be for 10, let it be 10 by default, and then page number is going to be 1. That's completely fine. But then there's one more thing over here, on sort and on page change and on limit change, right? These functionality should also be there. So let's do one thing. On page change we need to fetch the latest data over there, right? And how can we do that? So we are going to call this function once more here. We are not going to send data directly here. Instead we'll say default page number, and this page number actually should be coming from where? Either it should come from, okay, let's do that later. I will tell you why is that so. So I will say by default page number is going to be 1, and then limit is going to be 10. We are not going to show more than 10 by default, okay? So I'll just copy this function and paste it here when user is explicitly changing the page. So I'll say okay, just paste it here, and then this time this page number should be what? On page change when we have this event capture over here. So let's go back in component and we will see what exactly we are omitting from there. So I'll open this app table and then see if we have that emitter over there. So we can see that we have load page number. That is completely fine. Is that so? Load page number. And then what else we have here? Let's go up, and then you can see on limit change, that's completely fine. But then load page number, load page, actually we have page. So are we using the same key over there to capture the event? So verify that once more here. Load page number, yeah, that's what we are doing here. We are capturing that event here, and then event will have directly value, right? So I can just use, instead of event, I can say the value, or yeah, value will be making more sense in this case. So I'll say page number, not value. Let's do page, right? So I'll say okay, this time page number is going to be page, and then limit is of course going to be the limit. That is by default 10, but not in this case. We need to do one more thing. So let's say you search for this page, okay, and then you are on page number 10, but then if you refresh the page, that record you will lose, right? Page number and limit you will lose, because that page number and limit we are no more saving anywhere. It is just there in the component pages or Vuex, right? And we will lose that record on page refresh. Then again the page number will be 1, and then limit will be 10. That's kind of irritating, right? Even though you have come across 100 pages, and then if you by mistake refresh that, it will go again back to page number 1, right? That's not the expectation in this, and we need to rectify that. We need to save those data somewhere, or we can do one more thing. We can just append that data in the query params itself, right? If we will do that, then of course we will be having those data. Every time we refresh page number 1 should be there, or it will be just caching those data, because URL is not going to be changed until you will manually change that URL, right? So here as of now let it be 10, and then we'll make these changes later. So what I'm going to do is I'm just saving this, and we are getting some error. And why is that so? Let's see that. Book list, that's completely fine. We are saying page. Do we have page present on this component? Data dot page, that's completely fine. So what is the issue? Await, okay, issue is await actually. So this, if we are using await in JavaScript, we should make this function as asynchronous, right? So that we can use await, otherwise it won't allow us to use await. So you can say await and async both are brothers. All right, so I will go back on UI, and this time you can see data is loading there, right? That's cool. That's what the expectation is. And if I'll come down here, so still there's something which is breaking, I believe. Let's see that in console. Why is that so? Let's refresh the page and see if that works. Actually that, okay, pagination, we need to make that true. Still we are not making pagination as true. That's why we are not able to see the page. So for that we need to say, okay, pagination should be there. And how can we say that? So let's say that here. I will say pagination, we have defined that props over there. So pagination, I will say pagination, not like this. I'm sorry, it should not be like this. Why I'm doing that? So it will be pagination, and then it is going to be true. Not this, true. Actually I am faster than the suggestion. I will save this, and let's see if we are getting the page number there listed on the right side. So go back to UI and let me refresh the page. Hopefully we should be able to see that. So still that is not coming. Let's verify if we are at least getting the total records over there or not. So I will go in bookstore, and we can see total book records are there, right? So why is it not coming? For that we need to verify getters, and here you can see total book records, it is being returned, that's correct only. And then I will go back here, book list, in book list, and then I'm sorry, we are doing this on input. That's my mistake. I should not do this. Let me cut it from here. We should do this here. Pagination should be true. All right, that is why it was not showing the pagination. Let me save this and see if that works. And by the way, we should not use the static value, since we have to change at all those places wherever we are going to use this. So for that we know we are going to use limit, and then of course here the page number, and where we are going to define this, we know that this should be defined in the computed property, right? No, wrong. We cannot define that in a computed property, because computed property is specific for just to showing the data, just to get the calculation or perform the calculation, and it will just return you a data. Okay, it is not meant to change anything. It is not meant to mutate the data. If you are modifying any data in the computed property, at certain point of time you will be facing a lot of issues, because as soon as this data will change, your computed property will change, and then the respective template will re-render, and this may go inside infinite loop. Your application may break. Okay, so that's why we are not going to do that. We are going to define one more key over here, and I will say not pagination, I will say page number, and then I will say by default it is 1, and then limit is going to be 10. And just use this page number and limit everywhere wherever you are using that. So instead of this page number, of course this page number, don't use this. Instead I'll say okay, page number equals to page, and then use this page number, so that there will be a single point of truth. We can rely on that, on the specific data. So we can say okay, everywhere we are going to use page numbers, because this page number is only the source of truth. else everything is lie, not lie, but yeah. So I will say okay, just use this page number, and then of course the limit. So I'll say limit as not directly we can use, we can say this dot limit, right? This is how we are going to access the property of SFC. SFC is what? You guys forgot, right? SFC is nothing but a single file component. Cool. Here also we are going to say okay, same thing. So what I'll say here is just copy this from here and paste it there. So I'll paste it here, and it's kind of irritating when code doesn't look good, right? You need to always format the code so that it looks good, other developer can read that easily, and even you can read that easily. Okay, let's go back to UI and refresh the page and see if that works fine. Hopefully everything should be working fine in this case, and I will come down. You can see 1 2 is coming because we have total 18 data over there, and then those 18 data can be shown in 2 page only. That's why we have 1 2, right? But then this is not aligned, it should be somewhere here, right? Because we want it to display here, and then why it is coming in between? It's actually not in coming between, it should be at the end. So let's debug that. There should be pagination we can see, and then this should be okay, that's fine. Displays flex, and then it should be actually justify content end. It should be displayed here. That is looking much better, that is looking actually good. So go back to pagination and we'll assign this CSS key over there. So I'll go back here, and we have app table component over there, and there I will say okay, pagination you have, I will search for this CSS class, right? And I will say justify content end here, end. All right, I will save this, and let's go back to UI. I will try refreshing the page, and then this should be working in the expected way. I'm not more focused on 100% focused on design, but then still design is as per standard. You want to design it more, you are free to do that, please do that. So you can see now, if I'll come here, you can see page number 1 is there, and then page number 2, but we don't know we are on which page. At least it should indicate something here, like we are on page 1 or we are on page 2. Let me just click on page 2, and then we should be able to see, it should be able to trigger the API with the page number 2, and we should be getting data with page number related to page number 2. How can we do that? Let's click on this and see if that works. You can see API has been triggered, but then we need to verify that as well. So here I'm going to say okay, let's click on payload and see. We are not expecting this kind of data here, right? And of course that is not expected. So I'll go back here and we will check how we are emitting the data over there. So you can see here we are emitting data like this, page number and then page, right? So we are actually emitting data in the object format, so we should expect the object over there, and then we should perform next functionality on that. And how can we do that? We'll come back here. It's as simple as that. Here instead of page I can say okay, event will be there, of course, so we can take out the value from event. I will say okay, event dot page number. So event dot page number, right? Now this should be the way we are calling API. And then one more thing we need to verify, why exactly data is coming over there. Instead it should send this object, right? So for that we need to go in actions and fetch all books. Fetch all books is there. We cannot do like this filters, instead we need to say data, right? Because filters is coming inside data. We can have lot of options inside the filters, right? So I'll say filters.data. We can have app options, we can have headers and params as well. That way we have designed this application, right? So that is highly flexible, and we can pass any data in the any format we want. So let me just save it and go back to UI. It's refreshed, and I will just clear the console, and if I'll click on 2, you can see here data changes, right? But this time data is coming from serial number 11 to 18th, right? And we don't have any other page. That means we are on the last page, right? And how can we say that? Okay, you can see here we have sent page number 2 and the limit is 10. Yes, of course we have on page number 2. So this is how we are going to make our application, and this is how we are going to implement the pagination all across our application. Wherever we may expect a lot of data over there, we need to do that actually, so that it should work efficiently. Our UI should not hang, right? So this is fine. Next we need to say, okay, this is completely working fine. If I'll click back on page number 1, then I can see the data from 1 to 10, right? That is completely fine, and that's the expectation actually. Then one more thing over here, when we click on some page number, we should be able to see that page number. How can we say that? So we are going to do one more thing here. As soon as you will click on this page, right, there will be one change in the params, and the change will be nothing but the page number. Okay, so I will assign a page number in the URL params, so that even if you refresh, it will load the same page without resetting back to the actual page, not actual but the default value page, right? How can you do that? I will just go back in book list page, and here I will say, okay, as soon as you click on this, even though we are modifying this page number, and then I will say do one more thing, this dot, okay, I will say page number, not page number, I will say this dot dollar router, I will say dollar router dot push. Okay, if I'll do that, that means again this function will not load the data. So how can I do that? How can I append a new property in that? You can say in that, not in that. Let's see if that works. So I'll say, okay, dollar push, and then this time I'm going to say, okay, it will be on list page, so books will be there, of course, and then I'm going to say, okay, page number is going to be, let's say page number is going to be the page number which is coming here. So I'll say page number, and then the limit of course should be there. So this is how we are constructing the URL query params. If we have multiple variable over there, so we are dividing those variable with symbol and operator here, right? So I'm going to say and then limit will also be there. So I will say limit equals to going to be this dot limit. All right, whatever limit value is there, so we'll be using the same. But here, whenever the limit change, event we'll be getting those limit here as well. So I will say, okay, this dot limit equals to event dot limit, whatever coming from that app table component, right? And then here also I'm going to say, okay, then change this limit as well. So I will say, okay, this time it should load this much of data. So I'll say, okay, page number should be here, page number, and then this limit. So actually we can do one thing. So we don't need this here. I'm just going to comment this. Why? Because as soon as this will push for this specific route, then this page will be re-rendered. That means if this page is going to be re-rendered, then this mounted will be executed once more, and if that is the case, then this API will be getting called, if I'm correct, right? That's the concept of Vue.js. So if that is the case, then we no need to take this page number from this page number. This time we need to take page number from query params, right? Because in the query params we will be having this page number and then limit, right? And we can do one more thing over here. We are going to just check if page number is there. So I'll say, okay, this dot route, we know that. How can we access route? We will say this dot dollar route. That means dollar route is a global variable object present over there in Vue.js. I will say this dot dollar route. If you're not aware of this, you can watch my previous videos on Vuex routes and everything I have defined very clearly. And if your guys is still unable to get that, please let me know in the comment section. I will try to explain that one more time, not one more time, but as many as time until you know that. Okay, so here I'm going to say this dot dollar route, and then I'm going to use not params this time. I will say query. Okay, and then if that query is having, let's say, page number, all right, if the page number is already there, then that means I'm going to assign this page number here. So I'm going to say this dot page number equals to this page number. All right, And if that is not the case, of course we will be using the default page number, right? As simple as that. So here I'm going to say okay, that's fine, then the limit also should be there. So I will check similar condition for limit as well. I will copy this from here and I will paste it here, and I will say this time limit. If limit is not there, that means this dot limit is going to be coming from the query. Not there means no, that means limit is there, because we are checking for the limit to be there, and if it is there means we are taking that limit from the query params. Cool. So I will just save it, and then let's see if that works. We are assigning those default variable here in the mounted, and then we are triggering the API. That means it should be working in the expected way. Let's see that. I'll go back to UI and just refresh this page. Okay, that's completely fine. We are getting the data, there's no issue. And then if I'll click on 1, then there should be something changing here. You can see page number is coming as 1, and then limit is 10, right? But then API should also be triggered over there. Why it's not triggering? There's some issues. Okay, let me just clean this, and I will, okay, what does it mean? The view you are trying to re-render for path books does not have required iron page. Why is that so? It is saying you are trying to render /books, but then it doesn't have iron page. How is that possible? Let me go back here. I will click on this book list and see if iron page is there. We can see iron page is there. Then why it is giving error? Then that error is something else. That is not that can be a bug in Vue.js or Ionic. Okay, because on this page book list we have iron page over there, and that is what this Vue.js is expecting, right? So we cannot do that. We cannot say anything over here. Instead we just need to use that, but then the API is not getting triggered, and how can we check that? So let's trigger that here and see if that works fine. So I'll just save it and come back here. I will refresh the page. We should be getting data related to page number 1. We are not getting data. Limit is 10 and page number is 1. Why is that so? So even though we can see data over there, items are there, but then why we are not able to see the data? Are we missing something, or there's any error in the server? You can see here cannot unmarshal string into go struct field. That means this page number we are expecting of type integer, and then it is coming as a string. We cannot do like this. Instead we need to typecast it to, I will say typecast it to integer. Alright, so that this we can make sure this will always be integer instead of the string, because whenever you assign some variable in the query params or URL params, it is going to be of string. Okay, so the same thing I'm going to use here as well. I will come here down and then I'll paste it here. Let me just copy paste it here, and then now it should be working fine. Let's check that. I will go, you can see here we are loading data back and it is completely working fine. And then if I'll click on page number 2, then the route should be changing here, and then it should load page number 2 actually. Let's see that. Okay, this is loading data, and here you can see it is getting changed as well. The data is getting changed and you are getting page number 2 as well over there. But the thing is, this is still not indicating you are on page 2, and how can we do that? So we can say okay, that's fine. So we can assign a class dynamically on this button, so that it should be it should indicate something. So I'll say page button. Okay, let's change the color, background color, and see if that works. So I'll say background. Yeah, that works. So in this case what I'm going to say is page button, and then on page button we are going to assign some variable, not variable but the background color. So for that we need to go back to app table over there, and here we can say okay, if you are using pagination, what I will do here is I will create one computed property over there, and then I will say this computed property will change every time component re-renders, right? Or anything change which trigger this component. So I'm going to say okay, this dot this dot, not this dot. Can we watch for the value? That is also possible, right? So let's do from computed property now. So I'll say okay, get page number. So I'll say get page number, and here I'm going to say is okay, this is going to be a computed property. What it will do is it will just return this dot page number. Okay, we already have the page number actually. So I'll say page number, that's completely fine. And then this time I'm going to say okay, just use this page number. Why to use this, why to create this new variable over there, why to create this new computed property, right? So I'll just cut it from here since we have the page number in the props. So I'm going to use the same page number here, and then I will just say okay, if the page number and the value matches, then we are going to apply a certain class on that specific element or button. So what I'm going to say here is active. Okay, you are assigning actually the active class over here. And then where's active? Active is not defined here. So what I'll say here is okay, just define one active class here. And how can we do that? We can say okay, active, and then background is going to be, let's say, dark blue or something. Background I'm going to say, let's say, gray, and then I will be using color is going to be white. All right. So let me just save it and see if that works fine, because this should be working fine properly. And you can see here page number is coming from where? Page number is coming from nowhere but the total pages, and we have total pages over there. If that is the case, then page number will get matched with this, not triple equals to, but double equals to. That page number may be string as well. So let's keep this double equals to, and then this should be working exactly fine the way which we expected. Let's go back in UI and see that. You can see we are on page number 2, and then this is selected. Now we can identify okay, we are on page number 2. What if I'll click on page number 1? You can see page number 1 data loaded, and then we are on page number 1. That's great, right? I'll just close this and let me just go back to any other screen, and I will come back here and see if that works. So I'm going back on this staff list screen, and then I will just come back here on book list page. You can see by default page number 1 is selected, and if I'll click on page number 2, you can see page number 2 is selected because we are loading page 2 data over here, and it's completely working fine. Next, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do one more thing over here. Since you can see here we are loading, we are showing this, you can select the limit from here as well. So if you are able to select this limit, that means the limit should also be changed there. And how can we do that? We are going to say okay, you are capturing the limit as well, and in which event you are passing those limit. So we are passing those limit in, where is that? So resize is there. Okay, that's fine. So where we are handling that? Okay, we can say here on limit change we are emitting limit value. So how can we capture this? Of course we need to go back in book list where we are using that app table component, and here already we have on limit change functionality. Now as soon as this captures the event, right, it will change the limit of the page of the data, of the table data, right? Once this limit is changed, then again we need to trigger this API, and this time the same. So I'll say trigger this API, but this time the limit will be different. Let me just save it and go back to UI. And why is that breaking? So because we are again using await, but then this method should be asynchronous, right? Save it, go back to UI and see if that works. So let me just refresh, let me just take it down, and then you can see this time I'll come back on page number 1, and then I'll just refresh the page so that I can show you if everything works fine. And this time we are loading data of limit 10. What if I'll say, let's say limit 20? That means API should get triggered, and all those data should be coming on this specific page only, because we only have 18 data, and that 18 data should be coming here, and then there won't be any page number 2. Let's see that in action if that works. And how can we say that? Let's clear this. We should be triggered those API. So I'll select on 20. You can see one API got called here, and then this time limit is 20 actually, and then we are getting all those data here on this page itself and we don't have any page number 2, that is exactly the pagination, how pagination works. That is exactly you need to implement the pagination wherever you are working, and the implementation may different, implementation functionality may different, but ultimate goal is to achieve this pagination. All right. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to page number 10 and see if that works. You can see that works, and we have page number 2 as well over there. That's completely working fine, right? So we are good with this. Now we need one more thing over here. As soon as we'll search for something, and we can use dbones, so that when we'll search for something after a certain period of time, not certain period, but after certain millisecond or second, the automatically API should get triggered. That is how we are going to make it. Or else we can put a button over here so that we'll type any search item over there and then click on that button for search, but that is not user friendly. User experience is not going to be good. Instead, user just want to type something and then this should be filtered based on the type, right? So how can we achieve that? Let's go back in book list page, and this time, so we can say, okay, we are binding actually this input book name. So I'm going to copy this book name. Now I'm going to introduce you to one more thing, that is watcher. Watcher in Vue.js. So what exactly in watcher in Vue.js? Watcher is nothing but it is just, and you can say it's kind of you can say it's a people waiting there, not waiting there, but seeing everything what is happening inside the Vue.js, what is happening to those reactive properties. Okay, as soon as any of those reactive property changes, this people will notify us, okay, this changes, correct? Not people, you can say anything, that's object or anything you can say, that's a watcher actually. And then anything changes, any reactivity happens on this component or on this pages, on the pages, you watcher will notify you, okay, this property actually changes, and you need to register for the watcher. How can you do that? So Vue.js said, okay, you want to use watcher, just create a watch block over there. And how can we create a block? We know that this is computed block, this is data block, and then we can say watch, right? As simple as that. And then how can we create a watcher on a specific variable? So we can say, okay, you just need to use the same variable name, this time book name, right? And then this is going to be, this is how you are going to be, you are going to make it. So name is going to be the exact same name on which you want to watch for the changes. And then of course I want to watch for the changes of the book name. As soon as user will change this, user will type something in their input search box, this book name will change, right? Because of V model, right? And then I am watching here, if this change, then we will be having two values. One is going to be new value which user enters, and one is going to be the old value, right? And this value every time you will be getting as soon as the value changes. So we don't need actually the old value, so I can remove it from here. That's completely optional. It depends on you if you need old value as well. So now this is how we are going to trigger this watcher, and then here I need to say, okay, that's completely fine. So if this value changes, what you need to do is you need to trigger this API, right? And how can you trigger this API? Of course, I will just copy this from here and paste it here. Cool. It will just take out this new value, and then, no, not new value. I'm just going to say, okay, very first thing you need to do is you need to append this value in the search. So I'll say, not search, in the key, not key. We don't need that actually. Why we need to store that value on page refresh? It should not be there at all. So I will say, okay, let it be there, and then here I'm going to say, just send this book name key over there, so that, not book name, we have defined in our backend as a book search. You can go there and verify. Okay. Nowadays my memory is getting strong actually. Okay. So I'll say book search, and then I will say, okay, new value. All right. Now just save this and check if that is working properly fine. And again the same issue. This time we should not be waiting for the data, because this will just search in the background and give you the latest data. So you can remove this await from here and just save it. Let's see that in action. I will just clear this network console and I will try to search for something, but before that we should not trigger API on each character enter. Of course you can trigger API, but as a human you can enter 100 of character just by moving your finger on the keyboard. But it should trigger API only after certain duration. Let's say you completed a word, and by default let's assume for writing a word you need 1 second. So you are going to trigger API after every 1 second. Okay, not after every 1 second, but after entering the words, and then if it lapses 1 second it should trigger the API. And how can we do that? We know that we have the concept of debouncing over there, right? So now this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that property over here. I can say, okay, just use this debounce property which we have defined on app table component when we have created that app table component. You can go back and see that lecture. So here I can say, okay, debounce, but after how many is going to be second or millisecond? Let's verify that. Even I forgot that now. So you can see here debounce. Is it there? No, actually that's not there. Oh, come on, why we are going to do it here? We need to do that on input, since that is a input property, right? So debounce is 0, you can see here, right? So I'll just register this debound. No, pass this debound where? On the input, not here. Why we are defining it here? So I'll just cut it from here and paste it over there in the input where we are searching for the book name. So I'll say, okay, debounce, and then this debounce again I'm going to define here in the data variable so that it can be changed later depend on our needs. So I'm going to say, okay, that's fine. I will say debounce and let's use 1000. That means API will get triggered after typing, and if that 1 second has passed, then only this API should get triggered. So I'll just click on refresh, save, and then go back to UI. Let me just refresh the page once more and we will see that in action if that is working completely fine. So everything is working fine. You can see here I will just remove this console and then I will just start typing something. Let's say I will type adventure. So I'll say adventure, and then you can see it took actually less than 1 second to type adventure basically, and then after 1 second only this API is getting triggered. That's the concept of debounce in JavaScript. Okay, not in JavaScript, but you can achieve similar kind of behavior in any program. Okay, you just need to put delay, and then after delay you need to trigger whatever functionality you want. All right, so I hope we learned a lot of things here, right? So let's go back here and you can see book search is going over there, and verify that if something is breaking. No, nothing is breaking. That's good. And then this time I'm going to say, okay, not adventure, I'm going to say AD, and see, great, we are able to, even with AD we are able to search for this, and page number is 1 because we have only one data. What if I'll just remove this data and see, we are getting all those data, right? That's the expectation which we want. So I can search it with code as well. So let me just search it with code, exact code, and it should be working in the expected way. You can see it's working in the expected way, right? API is getting triggered and those properties getting passed in book search, and then it's completely working fine. And if there's no data here, I'll just remove it, and then by default empty data will be going there, and still the API is working fine because we don't have to put that filter over there, right? So now we are completely done with this filter part, and then pagination as well. This pagination is completely working fine. Next thing is you just need to implement the same thing here in the staff list page as well, and let me know in the comment section if you guys feel any issue, or if you guys feel any faces any problems while doing so that I can help you guys and you can get a better understanding of what you are trying to do or what you have achieved. So we are done with pagination, we are done with everything. Now next thing what exactly we are going to do is I'm going to introduce you guys to a new you can say process, not process, but to the Docker, so that finally we can build this application not this application but our backend application, which is highly scalable in this case. Okay, and then we should be able to containerize those applications, that golang application, and we should be able to ship it anywhere we want. Okay, so in the next upcoming session you guys will be learning how we can containerize our application using Docker and what exactly the Docker is, right? And that is it for this video, guys. Let me know in the comment section if you like these videos. You can